Very good evening to, first of all, the most important person in the room, the author, the celebration of the evening, to Ram Madhav ji. Many congratulations. To the distinguished panel, Shri Manish Tiwari, Dr. Sham Saran, Dr. Suresh Prabhuji, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Uh, I did take the liberty of asking Ram Madhavji at the beginning of the evening if he believed in astrology. He very politely said, I don't disbelieve in anything. Now, reason I tell you all, I share this anecdote with you, ladies and gentlemen, is because a lot of you may have known Dr. Ram Madhav, interacted with him, um, felt his presence, and understood sometimes his dominance. I have had the privilege of knowing all four facets. This book, ladies and gentlemen, wasn't scheduled for today. It wasn't scheduled for this month. It was probably going to be a month or two later. And it is rare that in a publisher author symbiotic relationship, which goes on for years together, the author presses for the urgency for the publication of a book at a certain time. But this case was different. Ram Madhavji was insistent that this book should come out at a certain time, around a certain time. So I told him today, sir, either you believe in astrology and you read the stars right, or you have a hotline to Trump. It's only one of these two things. So the New World Order couldn't be more appropriately timed when the world is really coming apart at its seams, and when people are looking internal versus external for knowledge, guidance, and the path ahead. Probably this would be the best time for us to have had the privilege of publishing Ram Madhavji and this book. And thank you for giving us this opportunity, sir. And along with that, I hope, ladies and gentlemen, that this opportune moment allows us to reflect and sift through these pages to understand the importance of the new India in the new world order. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kapish. Now may I request the man of the hour, Sri Ram Madhavji, to please come and give his author's address.
Namaskar to everybody. I would like to, at the very outset, thank the eminences on the dais who have agreed to be here to release this book and talk about this book a little bit. As the author, also I would like to thank all of you for joining in this evening's session. As the author, I would naturally be very happy to talk a lot about the book, but my publisher will be unhappy because if I tell everything about it, you won't probably read it. So I don't take much of your time, except to say that this book, as the publisher already mentioned, this book is a little bit futuristic. It talks about the evolving world order. Many people these days talk about a new world order that is taking shape. Most of us talk in our public discourses, and uh, but none of us probably have any clear idea about what do we mean by that. When we say new world order, what is that thing that is emerging, that is evolving? I tried to define it in 10 points. What will be the 10 characteristics of this new world order? And in the second part, I tried to give 10 suggestions for India if it were to be an important player in the making of this new world order. I would stop myself from explaining about the book there only. I don't go beyond that. One colleague in the organization asked me, what is there for our ideology in it? You are talking about the new world order. What is there for us in our ideology? I come from a school of thought. So I told him only one thing, that, this book talks about what is there in store for us. When I say us, I mean gray-haired people sitting in the room to children in our country. It is going to be in front of us in a very short time. So to understand where we are entering and to prepare the country for that, I thought is a patriotic dharma of all of us. It is just not about talking about what happened in the past, but also where we are heading. When we talk about Viksit Bharat, we talk about Hindu Rashtra, many things in my school of thought we talk about. But what is that cheese, that thing where we have to take our country? This gives some idea about it. I said 10 points and 10 suggestions. It can be 12 points, it can be 13 points, 15 suggestions. But I try to give a few suggestions in this concise, not concise, actually it's more than 400 pages in this book. Uh, as I said, at this juncture, my role will be only to thank all those people who helped this happen in a very short time. It actually came out in a record time. And while I conclude, I just want to tell you something very personal. I always had love for books, so I have got a big library in my house, 4,000-5,000 books I have. So I used to hang two placards in my boards in my library. One board used to say, "Don't ask for borrowing a book from this library. You will say, just read and just I want to read it," because all these books are collected that way only. And I used to also hang another board. It is borrowed from a very famous European author. One who lends a book is a fool. One who returns it is a super fool. Don't borrow, don't lend, please buy and read. Thank you.
Thank you, Ram Madhavji. It makes us want to read the book even more now. Now, may I ask the chair of the session, Sri Suresh Prabhuji, to please give his address.
Namaskar. Good evening, friends. We all keep reading about what Mr. Ram Madhav writes week after week. He's a very active social worker, active political activist. He has many important responsibilities. He also runs a very important think tank called India Foundation, and in a process lays foundation for many things. But I wonder where he finds time to keep writing books like this. And if you read the book, and I must confess that I've read the book and I'm going to speak on the book, it is one of the finest contributions to this entire discourse about really what is happening around us and what should be done in a situation like this. So it's a very timely, thoughtful, sane intervention into this whole changing world, and what is the way we also should respond. That's his final part of his book. And therefore, I want to congratulate him, and I want to thank many of you I know who have traveled long distances. Some of you have come from probably spending hours traveling in the train, somebody flew in, but long distances and come here. So I really want to thank you for that. So, title of the book, The New World, it obviously presupposes that old is going or gone. Then will new can come. So there is very interesting thing that we are seeing and which he has mentioned in his book. Anarchy is a new order. It's a very harrowing thought to have, but that's a reality. In this new world, anarchy is becoming the new norm, new normal, and in which we are seeing very interestingly the demise and decline of two things. The demise of multilateralism, which Ambassador Sham Saran would very strongly feel bad about, like me and many others. Accepted norms of global governance are demised. Institutions which can run societies they are also, if not dead, on the deathbed. Checks and balances, which are so important for making a democratic world work, are also on more or less on demise, like you have seen that the institutions which are supposed to protect the rights of the people, the one person can decide whether what they should do and what they should not be doing. We are also seeing like demise the decline of United States as a world power, as a very dominant world power. We are seeing definitely a decline of that. We are also seeing a decline of liberalism. And that also at the same time, obviously, the emergence of conservatism. And in the process, we are seeing, which all is mentioned by, I'm just quoting it from very fantastic, very insightful writing by Mr. Ram Madhavji. The USA led world is actually now the new world which will emerge will not be that kind of world. And that for many reasons. One, internal. US has such a huge debt pile that the debt to public debt to GDP ratio already passed 100% and might even go to this after this big beautiful book, a big beautiful bill, which Manish would have liked to comment upon if it was moved in the Indian Parliament, is something which is also going to add to that. So therefore, alliances that US built, which made them stronger, are demolished, as well as debt. And this new order, we are seeing an emergence of China for many reasons. The largest foreign exchange reserves, highest exports, highest production, modernization of armed forces, new technologies, and also very high influence of soft power. And as Mr. Ramadi said, the new trends are emerging, as it obviously happens. When something new coming, the vacuum is created, somebody will have to fill it in. So China is not the only one who would be there, and we are trying to work on so many other possibilities. And one of them, as he has used the word, multipolarity. So it will not be unipolar, not but multipolarity world will also emerge. In that, I hope BRICS also fall somewhere. But as somebody was asking me the other day, what do you think about bricks? So I was saying normally when you construct a house, you need brick, right? But bricks need glue so that a building can be constructed. So we have to wonder what is that glue that will really bring this political grouping of bricks into reality. We are also seeing that non-state actors are now playing a key role in a process redefining the state itself, the concept of state. And therefore, in this technology world, which Mr. Ramanuja has very elaborately dealt with on AI and others, in my opinion, even some sort of a sovereignty is compromised because of this infusion of this technology into this, which he has very well explained. At the same time, we still have old issues, which Mr. Ramanuja has dealt in his book, whether it is climate change, and he has given a very good title to that issue, Atlas Changing Earth. This has been an issue for a long time. And Ambassador Sham Saran was our envoy to dealing with this. And we came out with so many, I was Minister of Environment, so we dealt with these issues. Economic issues, which are one of the old issues I'm talking about. And in that now, the often talked about issue of de-dollarization and inequality. Again, I'm very happy to see that Mr. Ram Madhavji had dealt on it very, very well. In fact, each of the chapter of his book should become another book itself, because he has put it into concise form the way he has actually highlighted the issues. And therefore, some of the issues that I just talked about, whether climate change and others, need global action. When the old world is collapsing and new world is still emerging, how do you deal with that? Is a very, very important issue. And where do you go from here? And that's what he is talking about in his book. That is the other part of his book, the later part of his book, Reimagining India and Building Brand Bharat. That's what is. He has devoted good space of his book putting his own thought process into this. And in that, he has also mentioned about what is that model that we should have. Should we copy somebody else or should we develop our own model? And I think that is what he has also devoted his time on that. And that's what we should try to work on, develop of our own model. And in that, this new structure should be based on age-old, time-tested thought, which we have in abundance. And we should be proud of that we have been carrying it out as a civilization, one of the longest living civilizations, in fact, for a long time, and in which he has made some very interesting, and I want to therefore quote it. He has mentioned that chitti, which is our inner self, our soul, should be the guiding principle to build this new idea. And which he has said that Deen Dayalji Upadhyay, he had mentioned about Virat, which the thought that he gave to take this, make this chitti rise, to create a mega power of people. And there he has given a very interesting anecdote. This is the conversation that happened between T. Prakasham, who was a member of the Constitutional Assembly, then he became the Chief Minister of Andhra Pradesh, and then the conversation between him, Mr. T. Prakasham, and a Lala Lajpat Rai. When he was studying abroad, he said, how do you deal with such a huge power, British power, such a disciplined society? How do you deal with that? And that answer was given by Gandhiji. When we actually awakened the soul of people, and the chitti was made Jagrut, and that's how the freedom, not only won it, but we won it in a very magnificent way. Unlike many other societies, many other countries, we won it in a right way. So therefore, the new model, and that's what we talked about, should be built on ethical and moral values. And I am again quoting what Ram Madhav has said. Will Durant, he had said the spirit of India lives in religion more than science. That's what he has mentioned. So just imagine, we should not forget that fact. While he has also talked about embracing technology in a very significant way, but it's a reminder about what we can do. And he has also mentioned about post-Buddha, how we really came out with this is not only here, but in our neighboring China or in Greek, how the thought drove the entire process of rejuvenating the societies, and he has talked about it. Ram Madhavji, in his concluding part, he's also talked about the way forward, democracy, Bharat, he has used a very interesting word, dharmocracy. It's a very important word. It's a word, said dharmocracy, not religiocracy. Using with the dharmocracy because dharma has a unique meaning in our culture, in our belief. We say you follow dharma, the righteous way, you can never lose. You can also maybe retreating for a while, but you'll always go and win ultimately. And that's what he is mentioning, dharmocracy. And again, he has his own piece quoted. Gandhiji, he had said, I can't live without religion. I would rather live with religion because this is my integral part of my personality, my own self. And that's why he also theorized the concept of Ramarajya. Incidentally, Mr. Ram Madhav also writes a column called Ramarajya once every week. I think it appeared yesterday also on one. And he has also talked about for a future path. He has given very interesting examples. How patriotism, if it is really fueled properly, how that can achieve incredible results, like it happened in case of Japan. When nothing was remaining, and then it was there. And so, I think we are waiting for our Vice President. So my last point is, which he has mentioned very well, he must build a value-based global order, and in my opinion, that is what is meant by Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. So I think we really are very looking for the new life, new order. We, as Bharat, India, we should adopt new technology will also ensure we create new jobs. And in that is what is important. Let me welcome who is entering any moment now, the Honorable Vice President of India, who will be actually reading this book. And we are just waiting for him to join in. And then there are two very illustrious friends of mine. One is Ambassador Sham Saran, who has been the authority, is the right person to speak, as well as Mr. Uh, Manish Tiwari.
Honorable Vice President of India, respected Shri Jagdeep Dhankar ji, the celebrated author of the book The New World, Shri Madhav ji, one of our most eloquent parliamentarians, Shri Manish Tiwari ji, Shri Suresh Prabhu ji, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I wish to thank Ram Madhav ji for inviting me to participate in the launch of his latest book, The New World, the 21st Century Global Order and India. I am honored by his invitation and congratulate him on the publication of a seminal work on statecraft and international affairs. You will all agree that the book has been published at a most opportune time when the geopolitical flux the author has drawn attention to has brought the world closer than ever to the prospect of a widening war right on our doorstep, renewed economic disruption, and most tragically, greater and more widespread human suffering. I say it is an opportune time because somebody mentioned that maybe there were some astrological factors which were at play in deciding the date of this book. Obviously, it was done, if the prediction was made, certainly it does, reinforce one's belief in astrology. So, Dr. Ram Madhav ji, very well chosen this particular time. As I said, we are in a world which is in flux, which is, heading in a very unpredictable direction. And most of all, as I said, there is great human suffering that we see in our midst. The horrendous genocide in Gaza, the prospect of an even larger human tragedy in Iran, point to something that Ram Bahadur ji has drawn attention to. That is the dimming of the moral core which defines the larger humanity which we are all part of and which he so eloquently upholds as the spirit of India. We are not always able to translate this high principle into our foreign policy posture. This tension between ethics and reason of state is very real. But nationalism bereft of an internationalism which recognizes our common humanity is, for me at least, too narrow a concept. Its dangers are manifest in the crisis which is unfolding in our Western neighborhood. The New World is truly a most erudite and magisterial work, reflecting a deep historical understanding of how our world has evolved over the centuries. The author combines the acuity of a political thinker and the keen insights of a social scientist to offer what is a uniquely Indian perspective on the powerful forces that are shaping the world, which is in the making in this 21st century. Geopolitical shifts, in particular the emergence of China as the second ranking power in the world, these are changing the balance of power. The accelerating pace of technological change with exaggerated promise of artificial intelligence and quantum computing, and also their pervasive disruptive potential, the existential threats of climate change, and ecological degradation of our planet. All these have been analyzed by Ram Madhavji, drawing upon a wealth of scholarship from across the world. This is evident in the substantial notes appended to each chapter. I would commend his chapter China, the Roaring Dragon. I found his observations a sober and a realistic appraisal of what India confronts as perhaps its most defining challenge in this century. I was also impressed by the chapter Future Shock, the artificial intelligence era. The author displays, I must say, a truly amazing familiarity with a subject many of us find arcane and at times bewildering. Technology has truly emerged as a key metric of power. I agree with him that India must move with rapidity and resolve to position itself in the front ranks of the technological frontier. The final chapters of the book are about India's place in this rapidly transforming world. I agree with the author that the post-Second World War liberal internationalist rule-based order is in its death throes. And truly, the assassin is none other than its chief architect, the United States of America. But this will be a lingering eclipse, not a swift collapse of a new order minted and ready to take over. Like Ram Mahadarji, I see the shifting geopolitical landscape also throwing up spaces for a growing major power like India to expand its agency and to contribute also to the shaping of the 21st century order. Western power will decline, but its influence over many aspects of our lives will persist. It is in the medieval period that Western ascendancy came to be established, first with the Spanish and the Portuguese empires, and then the baton was passed on subsequently to the Dutch and British empires. The latest legatee of these geopolitical shifts is the United States, also an European power in its culture and attitudes, and which has been the preeminent power since at least the end of the Second World War. It may be noted that each of the geopolitical shifts in the last 500 years has been within an identifiably Western system, with each building upon the rules of the game set by its predecessors. There are many components of Western ascendancy, and some will prevail longer than others. Ram Madhavji has drawn attention to the challenge of replacing the US dollar's dominance of the world financial system. There are other areas in which inertial forces will keep Western influence alive, though diminished. This is a factor which Indian foreign policy must be mindful of. The book contains a blueprint for India to grow and occupy the front ranks of leading powers in this century. One cannot disagree with most of the author's well-considered recommendations. He sees many departures from the past in our current foreign policy, which I acknowledge, but I see many more continuities. This should not be surprising since the drivers of a country's foreign policy and the sense it has of its place in the world are shaped by geography, its history, its culture, and the temperament of its people. The citizens of this country, irrespective of their ideological or political persuasions, need to engage, to converse with each other, to debate with one another on issues that are so important to the future of our nation. I applaud the initiative Ram Madhavji has taken to enable such engagement at a level that is marked by sobriety, not excess, by intellectual integrity, not prejudice, and above all, by a common commitment to a bright future for a nation we all love and cherish. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Ambassador. Now may I ask Manish Tiwari ji to please give his remarks.
The Honorable Vice President of India, Shri Jagdeep Dhankar ji, the author of this book, Shri Ram Madhav, Shri Suresh Prabhu, and Shri Shyam Saran ji. May I commence by complimenting Shri Ram Madhav on his latest book that is both expansive in its exposition and incisive in its analysis. From the individuality of the early human to the social contract of conservatism juxtaposed against wokeism, this book covers a diverse array of topics, all discussed in great detail and analyzed in a very objective manner. My profound congratulations to Diksha, Shri Ram Madhav's daughter, who stepped in to do the heavy lifting to bring this work to fruition. Daughters are indeed special. As, uh, as it is with all delectable menus, and so is it with books, there are certain partakings that you may savor and others that may not be so appetizing to the palate. But that is the nature of the discourse, and that is the nature of scholarship when it is presented in a very cogent and articulate manner. As Mr. Ram Madhav outlines in the preface of his book, this book is all about the experience of the outgoing liberal world order built by the West and the possible shape that the incoming one will take. In other words, the moot question is, to paraphrase what Antonio Gramsci had written about a century ago, is the post World War II order dead and the new one yet to be conceived, and therefore, do we exist in the age of monsters? Or are we back to the old order as it was conceived in the 17th and the 18th centuries? The latter seems to be more the case. Given Ram Madhavji's estoppel about not discussing the contents of the book in great detail, which I think is injustice to an author, because ultimately it is upon the readers to really read the book in its entirety and come to their own conclusions. Let me then try and present an alternative scenario which may be food for thought for Mr. Ram Madhav's next scholarship. As we speak, as Mr. Shyam Saran and Mr. Suresh Prabhu were rightly pointing out, there are unprecedented trade tensions across the world triggered by President Trump's attempt to restructure the international architecture of commerce. The Russia-Ukraine war that began in the February of 2022, the Israel-Hamas/Hezbollah/Houthi Iran conflict that broke out in the October of 2023, and the rise of China over the past 3 decades that has attained portentous overtones in large parts of the world beyond the immediate Chinese realms in North Asia, Southeast Asia, and South Asia. The added dynamic is the latest India-Pakistan standoff, the worst after the Kargil war 26 years ago, and now the US bombing of Iran. Modern strategic thought is essentially an European construct because of the experimentation with ideas and the impulses of colonialism. As Mr. Madhav rightly points out on page 18 of the introduction of his book, that the arrival of printing in Europe animated Renaissance, Reformation, and other humanist movements. In addition to this, it also gave structure to contemporary strategic canons. The Peace of Westphalia in 1648 sanctified the construct of a nation state. Cardinal de Richelieu, the first minister of France from 1624 to 1642, and a prince of the church, propounded the concept of raison d'etre, namely that each nation acts in its own best national interest. It was closely followed by the doctrine of balance of power, the alliance system conceptualized by Hugo Grotius and first put into practice by William of Orange, later King William III of England between 1688 and 1730. These three doctrinal templates laid the foundational stencil of international relations that is kosher even today. This was followed by the Concert of Vienna in 1815, where these three hypotheses were tested. It ensured an uneasy peace for the next 99 years, when there was no general European war till the beginning of the First World War, except for the Crimean Wars from 1854 to 1856. In the May of 1892, in a memorandum to the Russian Foreign Minister Nikolai Girs, the Adjutant General of the Russian Army, Nikolai Orbachov, explained why the traditional method of determining casus belli of war had been overtaken by modern technology. What mattered most now was not was who mobilized first and not who fired the first shot. The undertaking of mobilization cannot be considered as a peaceful act. On the contrary, he opined it represented the most decisive act of war. On 28th of June 1914, Archduke Franz Ferdinand, heir to the Austro-Hungarian Empire, was assassinated. Within a month, the doomsday machine of general mobilization coupled with raison d'etre unleashed itself on Europe. Once Austria, Hungary, and Germany started to mobilize, other European powers followed suit and World War I commenced. By 1918, this Armageddon had left 17 million people dead. The Second World War was triggered by the imperatives of the alliance system. In 1938, German troops annexed Austria before occupying Sudetenland, a part of German-speaking Czechoslovakia. However, when the Nazis marched into Poland on September 1st, 1939, Great Britain, according to the terms of the Anglo-Polish Act, declared war on Germany on September 3rd, 1939. France followed suit, and the war dominoes were in full play. By the time it was all over in 1945, 85 million people were dead, and large parts of the world lay in ruins. It was followed by the Cold War. Both these templates, the templates of raison d'etre and the alliance system, were carried forward into the Cold War till the time the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991. The short point that I am trying to make is that if you look at the world as it stands today, when the old order or the post-World War II order seems to wither and a new one struggles to replace it, the moot question that we have to address ourselves to is, are we really moving into a new world order, or are we regressing backwards into an order which is going to be defined purely by the imperatives of national interests of various nations and the alliances that they are able to build along them? The experience between the end of the Cold War and 2025, when you had semi-state actors who challenged the sovereignty of states, actually proves this point that when confronted with an existential challenge, nations do not tend to rely on multilateralism. Nations tend to act in an individualistic, unipolar manner, which they think best suits or best defines their national interest. While there may be a lot of disagreement today with the manner in which certain states are acting, and there would be obviously larger implications of those actions on the world in the decades to come, but the fundamental point still remains that why have these states chosen to junk that entire multilateral system which they had so assiduously constructed after the end of the Second World War, when it came to what they think are their own survival and their own existential questions. And this has been both the strength and the continuum of Indian foreign policy, which Mr. Shyam Saran very, very rightly referred to. And so, therefore, if you go back to the genesis of the Indian Republic in 1947, you essentially have two imperatives playing themselves out when Prime Minister Nehru took over the reins of office. The one was raison d'etre that India's sovereignty has to be saved by acting in its own best interest. And number two, given the division of the world into two power blocks, we needed to build a system of alliances, which was then called non alignment and today is called multi alignment. So, therefore, there has been a continuum now going back 7.5 decades. And therefore, I would like to conclude by saying that this work by Mr. Ram Madhav, where he has spelt out the continuity and the departures in our foreign policy as we look towards an uncertain world and an uncertain future, is something which is a must read for any scholar of international affairs. And I think it will help deepen the understanding of people who study international relations, who have an interest in strategic affairs, that they will be able to feel the stones and try and fathom for themselves whether a new world order will in fact emerge in the coming years and decades ahead. I would once again like to thank Mr. Ram Madhav for inviting me to this book launch and would like to once again congratulate him on his scholarship. Thank you very much.
Now, notwithstanding the wonderful words that we've heard from Shyamji, from Manishji, from Sureshji, sir, sometimes enthusiasm gets the better of us. May I now request the Vice President of India, Shri Jagdeep Dhankar ji, to deliver his address.
Good evening, all of you. It is one of the trying moments in my life. I would have been better off in the audience given the expertise of those on the dais. To me, it seems to be a litmus test before the upcoming monsoon session. Ladies and gentlemen, when I sit in Rajya Sabha, on my right is the government, on my left is the opposition. There are occasions when I'm easy punching bag for both. This is a verifiable factual situation, and I'm sure you will engage in that. Those who will do so will do me a great favor. They will share my concern and anguish. Sri Suresh Prabhu, he has had many hats, but the one I look at always, he is a source of inspiration and motivation, and a man full of positivity. His visits to Rajbhavan, Kolkata, City of Joy, where I was governor for 3 years, were soothing to me. And same when I hold this office of Vice President. But herein, his visits have been infrequent, but I made it a point to visit him in Maharashtra, which he is not very keen at the moment. Sri Manish Tiwari, a very distinguished member of Parliament, a former Union Minister, and I'm always, even if I disagree with him, that is more often than not, I admire him for his sharp intellect, timely intervention, and he is always at his best, never trips. He demonstrated this for the benefit of the entire nation while he was abroad recently. Indian Foreign Service, unlike similar services here, continues to hold the fort very strong. But one thing is there about this service: the division in the service, particularly retired, could not be more acute. Ma'am, I am addressing you from a distance with full sense of objectivity. I hardly miss any of your programs. Sri Shyam Saran, former Foreign Secretary. With respect to Sri Manish Tiwari and Sri Shyam Saran, you had feast of their intellect at my expense. They set very high benchmark. I'm used to that, but only in legal field. Both of them have taken me to a difficult terrain where headwinds, air pockets, and challenging terrain all have converged to make my life more uneasy than in the chair in Rajya Sabha. Coming to Dr. Ram Madhav, he reminds me always, and whenever I look at him and meet him, I say the same thing. So it is not for the first time. Two epics, Ramayana and Mahabharata. The central characters, Ram and Madhav. Distinguished audience, I'll be committing a great breach if I were to say that I rarely had the occasion to address an audience with such high intellect. My parliamentarians may take offense at it. But then sometimes truth must prevail. After all, Gandhiji taught us the power of the truth is you feel confident and you don't have to remember. Excellencies, distinguished audience, I am tempted to name some, but that will be making a mistake because I know most of you. And I hold all of you in deep reverence for your intellect, commitment, and be always bold enough to make your point known. I firmly believe that democracy is primarily defined by expression and dialogue. Both are complementary. This, in our Vedic philosophy, is Anantavad. One of the fundamentals is, and that is inalienable facet, non-negotiable. Respect the other point of view. My own experience shows, more often than not, the other point of view is the correct point of view, but I am saying it only for myself, not for Manish Tiwari and Shyam Saranji, for me. Friends, it is an absolute honor and privilege to share my thoughts with such a distinguished audience in Bharat, home to 1/6 of humanity, the most vibrant, oldest, largest democracy on the planet, with civilizational ethos of 5,000 years. I am really humbled. Through a writing trail of over 2 decades, Dr. Ram Madhav has got in the groove of being a philosopher and a thinker. On several issues, his columns in the Indian Express are a delight for the reader, thought-provoking, steering human genius towards seeking resolution of issues. I strongly commend this impressive and daunting undertaking, the New World 21st Century Global Order and India. I congratulate him. He must have heaved a sigh of relief after hearing Sri Shyam Saran and Manish Tiwari. You have crossed the first barrier. This barrier, on more occasions, is impregnable, and that is their forte. The book ruminates upon the current and cratering liberal order and reflects upon the potential new order. Manish Tiwari reflected at length on these as well. So did Shyam Saranji. Friends, at first glance, it reminds me of Paul Kennedy's, I quote, "The rise and fall of great powers," unquote. George Dunham, an American thinker, 3 decades ago, in a treatise effectively suggested that there is absence of strategic thinking in India on account of its Hindu philosophical roots. And there were takers of it. But with Sri Ram Madhav's volume, George Dunham stands corrected. He couldn't be more wrong. His analysis is far distanced from the ground reality over the centuries in this country. The work is an accretion to a vast and perennial body of work revealing convergence of Indian thinkers over world orders and India's place in it. A cosmic order and the place of Bharat and Bharat Khand. It has been evidenced in Vedic scriptures, our knowledge treasure. The ideals of Maha states, "I am Nijah Paro Veti, Ganana Laghu Chetsam, Udar Charita Nam Tu Vasudev Kutamkam." This encapsulates our philosophy, our outlook to the world, which has been demonstrated on multiple occasions and can be easily evidenced by recent developments. Friends, this means this is mine, that is his, say the small-minded. For the magnanimous, the entire world is one family. We belong to the latter part. That is the message of Bharat to the entire world. It has been consistent message, a message from which this land will never deviate. And it envisages a flat and communitarian world order, an order that augurs well for one and all. The principal Rajdham or ethical statecraft and Dharam Yudh, just war, in Mahabharat, Dham diplomacy in Ashokan edicts, and Mandal theory of Kotale, all are examples of theorizing strategic environments, all feast to intellect. These philosophies have ever been relevant. But in our contemporaneous challenged times, these are need of the global order. Friends, there remained a historical continuity in Indian thought process. During the Second World War, thinkers in Bharat applied themselves to a post-war order, K.M. Panikkar, being amongst many undertaking this onerous challenge. K.M. Panikkar observed that the post-war order will have a much larger space for Asian nations, as the colonial powers had curtailed any role for their colonies in the extant order. This is being realized increasingly. Very prophetic analysis. Colonization and repressive colonial powers ruthlessly engaged in human and otherwise resource exploitation only to their benefit and to our absolute detriment. In Asia and Western dominance, Panikkar laid out a vision of post-war order where Asia and the West will be equals. Panikkar also managed to reflect by imagining India as a maritime as well as continental actor that would have a substantial role to play in the global maritime order. Wherever he may be, his soul will be very soothing to know what is happening in the world at the moment with respect to what he thought about. His thought underscored Bharat's principal stance to secure equitable order, global peace, and harmony. Friends, this country has always stood for global peace and harmony, never having engaged at any time in its history on expansionism. The contemporaneous global scenario today is alarmingly concerning and also equally worrisome, particularly for peace-loving nations like Bharat. Today, as we stand at a critical juncture of history, Ram Madhav stands in that illustrious lineage of India thinkers who assiduously and vigorously embraced the intellectual challenge of thinking about the past, the present, and the future. Friends, Dr. Ram Madhav's description of 10 challenges is particularly stimulating. Considering that there are many more such challenges, an attack on civilizational ethos of countries like India would surely be one such. I must share with you some challenges for the nation are existential. I would not deliberate much on them, but the time bomb is ticking. Very prospects of changes, particularly orchestrated ones. I'm limiting the challenges. But those challenges that are orchestrated in the demographic and civilizational character of a country that has 5,000 years of history is bound to evoke concerns that will have repercussions for both domestic and global order. Our identity in its pristine value system has to be preserved. It is not optional. We stand for it. And you will find comparably others are doing it. Friends, these existential challenges are like, as I said, ticking bomb. Time is running out, waiting for diffusion and waiting for long. We are cliffhanging on several aspects. Any delay may worsen the situation beyond getting retrieved. Browsing through the pages of New World, 21st Century Global Order in India, I felt the imprint of Vinayak Damodar Savarkar in the author's thought. I have had the occasion to go to Andaman and Nicobar. I spent some time in the cellular jail. In that room, I prayed. I am saying so. It is emanating from not my mind, not from my heart. The thought is emanating from my soul. Savarkar, despite all the untenable misgivings and untenable misgivings in extremity, remains a celebrated thinker who stood at the wee hours of the post-war order. Savarkar, a staunch realist, believed in a post-war world where nations would act only in pursuit of their own interests, not based on idealism, morality, or international solidarity. Imagine how prophetic he has been. Look around last fortnight, last 3 months. All this has been seen by all of us. He rejected pacifist or utopian internationalism and emphasized that India must safeguard its sovereignty through strength, not by relying on Western dominated institutions like the League of Nations or later the United Nations, both ignoring due place to 1/6 of humanity. Peace comes from position of strength. Sovereignty is best secured when we are ever ready for war. Friends, I could not agree more with lamentations of the author Dr. Ram Madhav. He highlights a perpetual decline of global multilateralism and prescribes India to give up romanticism and focus on economic growth. While asserting this, I heard my good friend, Parliamentarian, former Union Minister Manish. He also reflected with a variation. I am not entering into a caveat. Friends, today's strengthening Bharat is the governing philosophy and a resolve of this government. It is steadfast, firm, non-negotiable, and notwithstanding the critics, it is spinally strong. The nation has never ever projected its stand so firmly. Let us not be misguided by the traction who said what. The government and India and its people stand firmly for the nation, nation first, and our nationalism. And just imagine, from digital to physical infrastructure and from research to education, India has been single-mindedly dedicating itself to showing its strength. The kind of strength Bharat needs has been carefully brought about by empowering the people to an extent, the scale which is mind-boggling. More than 500 million people getting into banking inclusion. Look at the scale at which people got gas connections. Look at the level at which digital penetration has taken place. I don't want to go on more, you know it. This has created Bharat in last 10 decades as the most developed nation in the world, developing by speed, taking note of the large global economies, making Bharat as the most aspirational nation at the moment in the world. Friends, these are times when we are easily misunderstood. The travesty of it is that when you say these things, hypocritically, psychophancy overtakes the traction to denuded you of your position by exactly pointing a finger which normally should be pointed towards them. Friends, even the Fabian socialists of the 50s cannot disagree with the direction of the country as we strive to attain. And what do we strive to attain? We are not creating Bharat. It was not born on 15th August 1947. We only got rid of colonial power. Sarve bhavantu sukhinaya, sarve santu niramaya. That is our philosophy. May all beings be happy. May all beings be free from illness. Maintained the tag of world's fastest growing economy during last decade. The Bharat has today enviable demographic dividend when it comes to youth. Our median youth age is 28. We are a decade younger than China and USA. Friends, as Bharat achieves universal well-being for all citizens, we become role model for others. We lead by example, not by proclamation. We already lead in areas like digital public infrastructure where global South nations can follow our path. It was the visionary leadership of Prime Minister Modi that during G20, the concerns of global South could be put on the radar. It happened for the first time. It was for the first time during G20 that African Union was put at par with European Union in the membership of G20. I would call it a game-changing development. And therefore, when we assess the progress of Bharat, our outlook must be very broad and myopic, not dictated by isolated incidents. Those who take a stand for momentary situations are not in the psyche or crew of Bharat. Once we attain this strength inwards, we can shape our strategic environment outwards. Friends, since the book reflects on global order, the rise of Bharat is benign, beneficial to all, harming none. Vasudev Kutumbakam. Benign because this country does not have history of conquest. We do not project our strength through external territorial aggression. The Prime Minister of the country, Shri Narendra Modi, sent a message to global community a few years back. We are not living in an era of expansion. He conveyed to the entire world that this nation believes that all global disputes, conflagrations need to be addressed through dialogue and diplomacy. And the Prime Minister did it recently when we had terrorists from across the border. He targeted only terrorists. It was calibrated, precise to keep away civilian population. Bawalpur and Muridke, associated with Jaish-e-Mohammed and Lashkar-e-Taiba, are proof of it. And how penetrating it was. Coffins were taken to Kabristan accompanied by terrorists, ministers, and people in uniform. But when it comes to defending ourselves, there has been legitimacy of the use of force in our strategic thought as we have believed in Dharam Yudh or just wars. I said so in the beginning. This is sanctified by our Vedic philosophy. Friends, let me again focus on the recent episode, Operation Sindoor. There was not an attack on 26 souls. What was ravaged was soul of Bharat. We are a land of Gandhi. Such a barbarity, such act of terrorism. The attack was on our integrity, unity, sanctity of Bharat and Bharati values. Let me say with deep conviction, what is inclusivity is in our civilizational vein. No one in the world can rise to a level to give us any lesson as to what is inclusivity. Because Bharat for centuries has been home to inclusivity. Friends, the second aspect is that our rise thus far has been beneficial for the global order. We have proven ourselves to be a force for good. When the world was turning towards inwards during devastating pandemic, Bharat became pharmacy of the world by providing vaccines to over 100 countries. We have made our unique digital public infrastructure open source, and there have been many takers in the world. I entered public life in 1989 as a member of parliament and was lucky to be a minister. I never imagined that India would be so accoladed by world institutions, International Monetary Fund and World Bank. Our digitization model will be so appreciated that our achievements in 6 years are not easily fathomable in more than 4 decades. And therefore, we again vindicate our philosophy. When it comes to humanitarian efforts, we rush to rescue friends and foes alike. Our Prime Minister and Defense Minister have repeatedly asserted we aim to become a net security provider in the Indian Ocean region. My friends on the dais and in the audience will bear me out. When there is distress, when there is need, Bharat is the first responder. A unique distinction. We have demonstrated it. We also persuade others for dialogue and diplomacy. When the world is on the path of war, we are witnessing these disturbing times. We remind everyone it is no time for war. For us, there is only one time of peace, prosperity, harmony, growth of all, Vasudev Kutumbakam. Bharat genuinely believes that there is no problem whose situation cannot be reached by traversing the path of diplomacy. Those who are here in the audience with larger experience than I possess, howsoever severe the war may be, ultimate resolution takes place on the table. Just reflect for a moment, who are the sufferers? How quickly they are forgotten. Their suffering is lifelong. And therefore this path is advocated. And that is why during G20, Bharat gave to the entire world this message by having motto, one earth, one family, one future. I need to move towards conclusion. Because that is what I do in Rajya Sabha on occasions. Manish ji, you are a leader of the masses. That doesn't mean those in Rajya Sabha are not. But sometimes we say, please conclude. I say to myself, Friends, the pathway to Bharat's rise would require careful treading. Because there are forces that are determined to make our life difficult. There are forces within the country and outside. These sinister forces, pernicious to our interests, want to strike by dividing us on issues even like language. Which country in the world can take pride of the language richness as Bharat? Look at our classical languages, their number. In Parliament, 22 such languages allow and afford opportunity anyone to express in them. It would require many such thinkers to come together and debate and discuss challenges and opportunities and aid policy makers in making right strategic choices. Evolution of policies must take place now, a little more representative character. India's think tanks, they are available in various formats, different political parties. It is required that there be convergence. I wouldn't suggest, Manish knows, the political temperature has to come down. There has to be greater dialogue amongst political parties. I firmly believe we have no enemies in the country. We have enemies outside. And some who are enemies within a small fraction, they are rooted to outside forces inimical to Bharat. I am extremely delighted that this work is out and subsequent generations of scholars and thinkers will deliberate for sure this topic, engage critically to examine original thought of Ram Madhav. I commend the author for bringing out this great volume. Friends, I conclude by saying Bharat is no longer a nation with a potential. Viksit Bharat is not our dream, it is our destination. The rise is unstoppable, the rise is incremental. And we will witness the most peaceful resurgence of Bharat that will be historical. And everyone in the country, every single soul in Bharat is committed to this because nation first is not optional. हम भारतीय हैं, भारतीयता हमारी पहचान है, राष्ट्रीयता हमारा धर्म है. Thank you.